Welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many names and faces. We're so glad to have you here at our panelists of constructing a culture of suicide prevention. I'm Patsy Anderson-Dunn. I'm the CFO of Grow Construction. I will be the moderator and represent the small company perspective. I will let Michelle Walker introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Great to see so many people joining this presentation today. I'm Michelle Walker. I longtime CFMA member. I was part of the start of the suicide prevention initiatives within CFMA. Dave James and I worked with Cal Bayer to have the first Suicide Prevention Summit here in Phoenix, along with Marge and several others, Valley of the Sun chapter, and then took it to a national committee following that. And then I had the privilege of chairing the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention for several years once it became a standalone entity. So I'm here representing small contractors as VP of Finance and Administration of SSC Underground, based in Phoenix, Arizona.
Great. Steve Frost, tell us who you are and what you've done.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Frost. I'm a safety manager for Howard S. Wright, which is a Balfour Beatty company. And I'm part of the local construction suicide prevention partnership in Portland, Oregon. I also sit on the workplace suicide prevention committee with Sally, that's run by Sally Spencer Thomas. And we've done a lot internally to help grow suicide prevention culture, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about that, as well as give you some insights from a perspective that I'm a small fish in a big pond. I work for a company. I'm a site manager who is international, and the support that my company has given me with this initiative, I never thought could happen, and I'm hoping that other people can also gain that support from their company. I am happy to say that our company, Balfour Beatty, did take the CIASP pledge last year as part of their commitment to suicide prevention.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Doug?
I'm Doug Otterfront. I'm the CFO of McCarthy Building Companies in our corporate office in St. Louis. What Steve said, we are also proud of what we have done, and really are not only our focus on suicide prevention, but I'll call it more broadly mental health awareness, both as part of our wellness program that we're quite proud of within McCarthy, but maybe even more importantly, the fact that our safety team has completely adopted the importance of mental health awareness as part of safety. So thanks for having me on the panel.
So glad to have all of you here. In this session, panelists are going to share their experiences of implementing mental wellness and suicide prevention education and the initiatives that they have brought to their companies. And really our objective here is to help you recognize how different size companies have developed a culture to acceptance. From a very small, Michelle and I stand in the safety meetings and share what we have to teams, health and safety managers, and bigger teams. So we're going to spend about 60 minutes talking through some pre-outlined things that we thought were important to the implementation, and then we'll have about 30 minutes of Q&A if you have specific questions, and we all are willing to answer any questions now or down the road. So our first topic is starting the conversation. Who was the company champion? How was it initiated? Doug, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure, Patsy. I mentioned in my opening comments that mental health awareness is part of our wellness program, and that's still all true. And we're proud of our wellness program that we've been really focused on for years. but I truly think our real dedication to mental health awareness came when our safety lead, I'm talking about our SVP of safety, and that entire team really embraced it and made it a focus item in May, and as part of Safety Week, made mental health awareness part of our Toolbox Talks at our projects, several project safety stand downs, and really played up mental health awareness and the tools that McCarthy makes available to deal with mental health issues. That teed us up to follow up in Suicide Prevention Week, second week of September. And really was we were able to tag on to those tools that we really advertised relative to mental health awareness and made it more specific to suicide prevention. So that's how we approached it. But I think what added a lot of credibility to it was those communications came from our chief operating officer. So while I say our safety program kind of owns it, they've got the full support of top leadership, and those communications go to our people from our president and chief operating officer under his banner. So call that a top-down approach. Sometimes I don't like that vernacular, but in this instance, we're trying to show how important it is.
Giving it credibility.
Right.
Michelle, I know you started the conversation.
I did. Hard to believe, right?
Right.
No, so yeah, it was definitely myself who started the conversation here at SSC. And as I said, small company between 40 to 50 employees, and how, and a culture really already, I think, well poised to accept it. Definitely kind of an employee first mentality, very, always work to have good relationships, support employees and, personal struggles they may be having, things like that. But where it really, I had been talking about it for a while. We had the summit. I had been starting to get involved, learn exposure from Cal and from Sally, and, kind of learning about this, and had been talking about it. But when kind of the rubber really hit the road for us, and when I could get the owners of the company to really kind of grab on and see why this needed to be a really formal, focused initiative, was we had an employee, long-term employee, kind of on and off, had some bumps in the road along the way, but, had over a span of a couple of decades been, employed for the majority of that. And he started to have some performance issues that, prior to my exposure to, what I've been learning about how mental health issues can kind of manifest themselves in performance issues. So he was showing up late to work, not showing up, having anger, kind of outbursts to crew members, things like that, not representing the company well to clients. I was able to, and it was really at the point of, kind of, okay, this is it. We've done what we can. We need to terminate. And so I took the bold step of speaking up and saying, hey, these are some of the things I'm learning. Would you consider taking this other avenue instead? And so we constructed a kind of like a second chance agreement that you would use for, a drug test, a failure of a drug test. We created it for behavior, and just, met with him and said, we believe there's something going on. There's been a dramatic change in your behavior. We're worried about you. So approached it from a care perspective with him, as opposed to a performance management type thing, and said, but we need you to partner with us so that you can get the help that you need. So here's what we're willing to do for you. We're willing to keep you employed. We're willing to maintain your benefits. You can use your PTO, but we need you to take a leave of absence, and we need you to go meet with one of these counselors. And we had kind of pre-vetted and given him a list of ones, close to home, covered by our insurance, that kind of thing. And you need to complete a counseling program with them and then come back to us. And he did. He took that, which, it was a risk. He could have said, no, you're full of it, and kind of thrown it back in our face. And he came back at the end of it and told us, he said, I asked my counselor if I could have a graduation ceremony because I wanted my bosses to see how far I've come. And it's been 6 years and I get choked up every time I say that, because that, it was a success, obviously a huge success for him, and we retained an employee and he was helped and saved through it. But it also cemented the leadership behind seeing that this is an important initiative and that this is something that we had to adopt, and kind of right away, somebody that they knew that they cared about be helped by it. So that kind of got leadership support completely behind it and really bought in. And so I think that it can be hard sometimes if you don't have that that person that you can connect the cause to kind of get people to really buy in at that key level, like Doug was talking about, kind of that top-down approach, but top-down and bought in. So having those real kind of people impact stories, I think, is really helpful with that.
I agree with that. We had a similar situation at a past company I was at, and hearing those stories and talking to people about that is a great way to just start the conversation and to get people's buy-in, and just to know, here are the 10 things to look for, and that it may not be a bad employee not being present, or like you said, with the anger or the not showing up, it may be a deeper issue. And now you have got them bought in and you bought in, and there's loyalty there, and you have a much better employee. And I think it really pays in droves when something like that happens. As we know, human capital is our biggest asset in any company. Thanks, Michelle. Steve, you came to my third Suicide Prevention Summit, and you and I hit it off, and you have taken the ball, and you're like 3 football fields ahead of me. Tell us how that happened.
Well, just to give everybody a quick version. So in 2018, there was a safety week at the Oregon Zoo, and Safe Build Alliance had an opening plenum, and they talked about suicide prevention and a mental health toolkit. And that's when I first was exposed to it. And I said, oh, wow, look at that. I got some shopping bag totes and some stickers and magnets and stuff, and I put them on our first aid kits. And then I said, that's great that people are talking about that. And then that was May of 2018. That September, our senior vice president of safety sent out a toolbox talk, a talk for the nation to talk about, and he spoke about the high rate of suicide in construction, and he encouraged us to start the conversation to bring up the topic of mental well-being and suicide prevention at our safety meetings. So that October, I kind of had everything lined out for September, but that October, I did roll out a kind of a toolbox talk that addressed things like sleep and proper nutrition, proper hydration. And then I worked into the suicide prevention aspect of it. And I said, hey, look, if you're feeling that you're overwhelmed or in crisis, there are people to talk to. And I had a bunch of these stickers I gave out from that meeting. And then from there, I started to have some really intense conversations with people. And it turned out the more that I talked about this, the more people came forward and were maybe in crisis or wanted resources. So I looked for a training within my company. I found a module from our Seattle office. I'm out of Portland, and it was in our Seattle office. They had the Needs Talk to Me program. So I took that and I rolled that out at the next safety week, the next year. And from there, I've just been, like Patsy said, I showed up at that summit with this banner and said, hey, we're a general contractor. We have a suicide prevention initiative where we want to start the conversation and get people talking about it, normalizing it, breaking the stigma, and making sure that people know that, hey, we understand what's going on. This CDC report that came out, the statistics are outstanding, and they're horrible, right? That we have such a high rate in construction. So we need to do something about it. We do stuff about fall protection, lockout, tag out, and we need to address this like another safety topic.
Mm-hmm. Keep
right.
So safe.
Yep. We want to keep it in the conversation and let people know it's okay to talk about stuff, and there's resources. So I did link up with another group of people that that Patsy was a part of, and also Cal Bayer had called me because I had been presenting this module throughout our industry, and they said, hey, let's get a group going together. So we got the Suicide Prevention Task Force together in November, I think it was November of 2019. And we have since changed our name to Construction Suicide Prevention Partnership. And from there, we're just the one-stop shop. We're sharing resources. We're creating Toolbox Talks. We're creating training modules. We're helping facilitate QPR training and train the trainers and just being that resource. So if someone does have a question, or if they say, hey, how do I launch a suicide prevention culture within my company, we can guide them and we can show them all the resources so they don't have to reinvent the wheel, and they have that stuff laid out for them.
And I think that we on that partnership have also gathered some things from the CIASP. We've shared things with them. And one of the things that I think we would all say on this panel is there's lots of resources out there, whether you're a small company or a big company, we're all in this together. And I think everyone is willing to share. And that's huge, especially if you don't know where to start or don't know what the first step is. There's tons of resources and tons of people that are thrilled to share and spread the word. Steve, one of the things you just touched on was normalizing the conversation in your company. So tell us more about the tools and communication pieces, and how is that going?
It's going very well. And one thing I want to say is that, the overall support, both from the partnership, so the local community, this is a partnership of other general contractors, union, non-union, vendors, clients, everybody's there, and we're all supporting one another. And then the support that I got from within my company was outstanding. The more that I created Toolbox Talks and wrote articles and shared this information, the more my company helped me fine-tune that stuff and get the message out there as well. So it was support from the partnership, support from my own company. And now we actually launched an initiative within my company for within our company for one, to do some more QPR training and get people trained up in QPR. And then two, I actually wrote a toolbox talk for our nation about being fit for work, being mentally and physically fit for work, and how those go hand in hand. So, and I can't believe that, we had an entire stand down this September, and they read that toolbox talk throughout all the sites that we're active on. So I thought that was unbelievable.
That is amazing. That's really amazing to have it across all your companies and sharing with not only, your people, but your subs. Doug, you talked about, or when we were prepping, we talked about the spread among company locations and communications. How do you do that in such a big company?
Right. I mean, we might have 150 job sites across the country. I go back to our Toolbox Talks and our stand down. So, several years ago, it was just kind of a good idea for us to do stretch and flex at some job sites. That caught on, and it moved from just being kind of odd to being standard operating procedure. Start the workday with a stretch and flex that's part of safety and preparedness for the job. When we talk about mental health awareness in Toolbox Talks and make it part of that agenda, we feel like that's an opportunity to normalize the conversation even into the craft level. Do I have a statistic to say, okay, check, we've normalized the conversation? I bet we're not there, but we're allowing the conversation to happen and making it as important as the physical component of safety. So I think that's one way. Our offices are a bit easier. We're able to do it at office meetings. We start office meetings often with a safety moment. I was in a conference Thursday with 300 people, and we started it off with a safety moment. And sure enough, our safety director leading that conversation reminded us of the tools that we have available for each of us relative to mental health awareness. So I would say the other thing that helps us normalize the conversation is we're employee owned. So a lot of our messaging is you're in it for you and you're in it for your partner. Help your partner, take care of your partners. It's our responsibility to take care of one another, and we're able to kind of tag into that employee ownership component also that helps us normalize the conversation.
That's excellent. I know, Michelle, you talked about having an executive roundtable of subcontractor owner leaders that you're working with to normalize the conversation.
Well, that was kind of how we, like industry-wide, kind of how we started this. And that's where, some of McCarthy's first support is, Doug talks about local offices, is at their Southwest regional office. Their president at the time, Bo, was a big supporter of this. And so we, he organized a group of, it was mainly subcontractors and their owners. And Sally and I were both there and talked to them, and just kind of that awareness that at the beginning, they kind of were really only there because Bo had invited them. But then by the end, as you start talking about it and you start sharing stories, how many people, once you kind of make that personal connection, how it can really help them, connect to the topic and kind of compel them to participate more. But as we talk about normalizing, I just kind of was thinking about this as both Steve and Doug were talking. I think one thing, again, as an industry and a culture, how this has become a much more normalized subject to talk about and to address in the workplace, on the job site, all of those things. When we were first starting all of this in 2016, there was a big initiative in September that was like the 22 push-up challenge or something like that. And so, and it was in addressing veteran suicides and the 22 suicides a day in the veteran community. And so there was this big kind of within this community that I was just becoming a part of with Sally and all of these, mental health and suicide prevention experts. And so there was kind of this whole Facebook challenge, and you were supposed to do 22 push-ups a day for 22 days. And so my Facebook memories have been coming up of that throughout September as that was going on 5 years ago now. And on the last day, I did it, and you were supposed to video it and post it. And my caption was, I really would love for this to become like, like I said, I think, 20 years ago, nobody probably wore pink in October and talked about breast cancer, and nobody wore blue and grew mustaches in November to talk about prostate cancer. But now that's just normal, and people are completely comfortable talking about breast cancer, prostate cancer. And I really hope that in this, in 10 years, we're looking back at suicide and have that same comfort level. And when I read that this year, I'm like, look, and then I was scrolling, through Facebook and all of the different posts from all the different construction companies and everybody who's gotten engaged. We really have moved the needle so far in normalizing the conversation. And I think that's just really encouraging. But then just within, our own organization and how to do that with the workplace, it's using all those opportunities that Steve and Doug have talked about, using the Toolbox Talks, using, new hire orientation, it's in our new hire orientation video, it's in our safety, initial safety training, and every single company meeting, it's talked about, whether it's, fits the top, whether it's Suicide Prevention Month or not, we talk about a topic related to mental health or suicide prevention. And I think just then, as a side note, that just happened yesterday here, we had a new hire, and I was out just talking to them at the crew at the end of the day. And the foreman said, "Oh, this is Michelle, and she talks about suicide a lot, but it's okay. She's not weird." And I just thought,
oh no.
I just thought, but it was totally comfortable. Like, he was comfortable saying it to this guy of, this is who this person is, and this is what she does. But it's okay. Like, don't be freaked out by it, kind of thing. And I thought, okay, like that, I thought was a great, just kind of firsthand normalizing. And it only comes with time. It can't be, a one-hit wonder, and you do, 1 month Suicide Prevention Month initiative, and then it's not talked about again until next September. It's got to be, baked in, not bolted on. That's, one of the sayings Steve was talking about the workplace suicide prevention. It's got to become kind of really the fabric of your company. And when you're talking about a topic as personal and as sensitive as mental health and suicide, people have got to really believe that it's core who you are, and it's not just a box that you're checking. And then that's, I think, when the comfort comes of, really being willing to open up, share, ask for help, seek out resources, help one another.
I think that story about your guys yesterday is brilliant. That's a beautiful barometer of it really is sinking in. You may not feel like you have their buy-in, but they know where to go and they know where to send people. And sometimes that normalizing, people start to make jokes and then they relax and they at least they're talking about it. And I think one of the things we all talked about on the panel is just get comfortable talking about it yourself. Make it normal conversation, and it makes it normal to others. And I wonder what fun things we're going to get to do for mental health, because I don't look good in pink and I don't want to grow a mustache. So maybe fun hats for our head. I'm not sure. So some of the things we have done to overcome challenges and normalizing the conversation. I know Michelle and I, being from smaller companies, we've sought out the resources. Like Steve said, there's lots of Toolbox Talks and things out there that made it easier for us to keep the conversation going and keep it just out there and kind of on the forefront. Like I said, not a one-hit wonder. It's got to be baked in. So I guess, what are some of your regular tips and tricks to keep this issue at the top of the list? At our company, we have the posters up. We do a quarterly lunch to reconnect. And part of that reconnection is a mental health check. Like, how are the jobs doing? How's our safety doing? How's everybody's mental health doing? It's just part of the conversation. Michelle?
Yeah, so that repeated check-in, we've added it to our daily THA. Is everybody physically and mentally ready to work safe today? That's kind of the lead in. So, our safety value was revised to include mental. So it's integrating it, not separating it from physical safety or physical well-being, but doing everything we can to make it clearly just a part of it. And of course, the dream would be that you don't even have to state it anymore and it's just assumed, but for now it's still stated. One of the things we've recently done to keep the conversation going is to do the Living Work Start training as a group with our field leadership. So, one of the risk factors for suicide in construction is management leadership issues. So the kind of tendency of our industry to promote people based on their technical skills, not necessarily their leadership or management skills. And so some of those poor management style or undeveloped management styles of kind of negative, not positive reinforcement, but negative, drawing attention to negative behaviors, or, yelling or cussing out, or, kind of that belittling, berating tendency that can happen can, create some of the risk factors for suicide. So one of our responses to that, in addition to just good employer practices, is we implemented a field leadership training. So those field leaders get a monthly class in communication, conflict resolution, how to properly train people, how to properly correct poor performance, how to, address bad attitudes, that kind of thing. So this month, for Suicide Prevention Month, we did the Living Work Start training with that group. So they all got equipped with the skills to recognize the warning signs and have that conversation and connect with help. And so it's all things that we talk about and that are, on the posters and on the Toolbox Talks that we do and all of those things. But it was the first time that we had done a formal training, to get those skills. And so it's things like that, like, just kind of reconnecting and deepening the level of understanding at every opportunity that we can grab onto.
Awesome. Doug, do you have your coin in your pocket to show?
Oh, you knew it was coming, Patsy.
Oh, I love it. I love it. This is a brilliant, easy, simple, keep top of the mind, keep the conversation going. Elaborate.
So Patsy's referring to this poker chip right here, or call it a ball marker if you're a golfer. We handed this out. A few other things. We got these cool magnets that I have one of these hanging in my office. We certainly do our posters. But the magnet, and I think particular this poker chip, kind of struck me. It sits in my office, and it's a fidget item. Okay, I'm playing with it and I'm throwing it, but the whole point is it's top of mind. We gave everybody some very physical tools like this poker chip to keep our mental health awareness top of mind. And right on here, it's got our EAP number and that level of support so that it's at my fingertips. So when I first received this, I thought, well, that's kind of cool. But again, it ends up on my desk and I'm playing with it. It wasn't 2 weeks later, I had a coworker in my office struggling with some issues at home. Do I think it was could lead to a suicide situation? I don't think so, but I'm also not the expert, right? I just know I had a partner and a friend who was struggling. And I said, hey, remember, we have resources. We have somebody that you can call and talk to that's objective and that can be helpful, and it might help you work through the situation. So, I mean, it may sound just crazy simple, but, it's little stuff like this that I think let our employees know that it's important and it's accessible. If it's buried in a file cabinet somewhere or 15 clicks into your internal website, that's not good enough. It's got to be quickly accessible, the tools, if we're going to help our partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the poker chip is brilliant. When you pulled that out the other day, I was like, oh, I do a lot of, we're a small company and there's 30 of us, but you can go to Office Depot and you can do the print out your business cards and put the same information on it and just have them out and around and in people's wallets and in every fleet vehicle. So, and
I think we should be free to steal each other's ideas, period, end of story.
This is absolutely
like so many other
we're here for.
We gotta, all these ideas are good and we should be willing to share them and steal the good ideas.
Steve, I want to ask you this, and then I kind of giggle. What's been your biggest challenge to keep enthusiasm top of mind and fresh? Because you are the enthusiastic guy I know.
It's I think for me to keep enthusiasm and to keep everybody talking about this topic, I talk about it. We do orientations, and I talk about this during orientation. And I give out, like I said, the first line of defense. The first thing we do is I have a roll of stickers. I have 500 stickers with the crisis line on it, and I give those hard hat stickers out. And then I also give a sticker out with my phone number and the site address and everything else. So when people leave, they have my phone number, they have the crisis line number, and then we have our banner posted at the job site with the crisis line number in English and Spanish, at the man material hoist, the Alamax, and also throughout the job wherever the first aid kits are. So I try to keep the conversation going and make it part of the daily conversation, bring it up at the Toolbox Talks as much as I can, and try to just, I think that for me, it's a passion, and the more people ask me to help, the more enthusiastic I get. And I think that when people see that, they get empowered, and they feel like they can help portray that message, and they can spread that word, and they can let people know that, hey, we're talking about stuff. We're having these conversations. We're finding our company is supporting us in this. And it is important. And I think that one of the main things, to go back a little bit, is it is a personal topic, and it's hard for people to talk about it. But one of the things that helps me is that I can identify and I can help people because I've been there myself, and I share that story, and I let people know that, hey, look, life is tough, and we are stressed out a lot, not only in construction but at home. So when you bring the fast-paced construction and the at-home stuff into the workplace, there's a lot of stuff that can go on, and how we handle stress and manage stress is very important. And from that conversation, I let people know, but look, just like we have a plan for getting to the edge of the building, we have a plan for dealing with stress, being emotionally intelligent enough to know when we are feeling it, being self-aware enough to know when we need to kind of maybe walk away, or, hey, it's time for me to call my EAP, or time for me to call a therapist and talk about stuff I don't want to talk about with my spouse or with my coworkers, stuff that I really need to get off my chest. But I have those conversations, and to me, letting people know, and sometimes the reaction is met with relief, because they might be suffering, and they might say, hey, look, I've been in construction for years. We never talk about this stuff. I didn't know that these resources. They think that the EAP is an emergency action plan, and we gather up at this location when the air horn blows, when actually we're talking about the employee assistance program, and letting them know that it's confidential. It's not just mental health. It's financial well-being. It is family counseling. It's nutrition. It's legal advice. It's a whole bunch of other stuff that people have at their fingertips, and they can use as a resource. So when bad things happen and when negative things happen, they know where to go. It's just like having that plan. It's like, hey, look, if this happens, we're going to do this. If something happens and I'm feeling stressed out, I have my own personal resiliency plan that says, hey, I'm going to walk away and I'm going to go see a movie, or I'm going to do the things that recharge my batteries. And then I'm going to deal with this stuff because I can feel it's having an effect on me. And to get 200 or 300 people that are out on our site to that level, it really charges me up. And I have no problem. And you can see I'm kind of getting all speaking fast, because I love to have these conversations, because if I had someone in my corner, and if I had someone to let me know what the resources were years ago, I wouldn't have had to go through such a tough time, because I honestly, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know how to deal with stuff. I didn't learn that in school, or I didn't learn that. I have a master's degree, but nobody taught me that.
They don't teach you that in school.
No, and you don't want to learn the hard way. And unfortunately, unless we're letting people know from the get-go, from the day they come on site, that if you're feeling stressed out, if you're feeling this way, there are resources for you. This is how we react to it. This is our plan. I did a video with the American Heart Association. They have a local group called Hard Hats with Heart. And that in that 3.5 minutes, it is about nutrition, sleep, exercise, dealing with depression and anxiety. And it's all stuff that helps kind of break the ice with people here, especially when they see me up there speaking about it. That physical well-being and the mental well-being, linking those together, like saying, hey, look, taking care of your mind is just as important as taking care of your body, because those two linked together will keep you injury-free and will help you be productive and be safe out there. That is really one of the main messages that we try to focus on. The injuries and stuff that happen on site, and I'm talking in construction, we're not hearing that, hey, so-and-so was having a tough time with his spouse, or they just lost somebody that they love, or they were distracted by something. We don't hear that stuff in construction, but it's there. Everybody has personal issues. And if we can encourage people to reach out for help and give them resources, even if they're not asking for it, just say, hey, on the way in, here's the number to call. Here's how it works. And they might not want to say anything about it. They might not want to. You couldn't pay them enough to tell them to have them tell you how they're feeling. But you've given them a resource. You've given them a way to get help if they need it. And not 200 people on the site. How many people do they touch when they get home, right? 4, 5, 6 people that they can also provide that resource for. And the families that are touched by the people that work in construction, it's really mind-boggling to think about how much of an impact we can have and how many people we can help.
The ripple effect, and make it a package deal, safety, healthy mind, healthy body. It's huge. It is huge. And it just takes one person to speak up to make a difference. Michelle?
Yeah, I just had 2 things that you said. Steve just kind of really brought up, again, things that we can do to encourage the conversation and keep the conversation going. And one is, when there is an accident or an incident on a job, of, pulling that factor into the investigation, and then even just into the conversation. So we recently had an incident on a job, and another subcontractor had a much bigger incident the same day. So the next day there was a shutdown, safety stand down. and added it was just talked a lot about the risks, and that, you know, you might be comfortable with a certain level of risk, but this is what happens when you take these risks. And I was able to speak up and say, and just because because again, one of the risk factors of construction is the risk-seeking behavior of, you know, some of the workforce. And saying that just because you're comfortable with those risks, you have to consider that impact and that emotional impact on the rest of the team when there is an incident, and how do different people handle and process that. And so we were able to kind of start a conversation during this safety stand down about the incident, about kind of the emotional toll that accidents and injuries can take on not just the person involved, but the rest of the crew and the rest of the people that feel that sense of responsibility. And then that led to, I got to go back and do to that same job site, much more positive safety stand down, a planned one to discuss suicide prevention and kind of build on that. So, you know, you can use those not good opportunities, kind of open the conversation to, you know, just expressing how mental health can cause accidents, but then also considering how they impact people and how they can have that impact afterwards as well. And then the personal, you know, that ripple effect, that's been one of my keys to getting kind of some of the more hardened, closed off, I don't need to know about this, I don't want to talk about this, guys in the field to talk about it, is to bring home the fact of, you know, teens are a hugely at-risk population for suicide. And during the pandemic, you know, your wife that's at home taking care of the kids and doing school and working from home and doing all that, like your life has maybe continued as normal because you're coming to work every day, but there's a whole lot of people who haven't. And you know, some of these things that you learn here might help some people that you really love. Like maybe you don't think you need to do this with your coworker, but there are some people who you really love and care about that you could really positively impact by learning this. And that's when you can kind of start to see the cracks open up and people be willing to listen. So kind of making that heart connection with people, you know, and it's true. This is, you know, we're talking about this as a workplace thing and workplace safety and all of that, but every single thing that people learn is going to have a positive impact on the community as a whole. And we can, you know, really start to turn the dial on suicide as a cultural issue, not just as a construction issue. So I think that's a key to getting people to buy in, is kind of the more what's in it for them approach to it, and how could this really benefit their friends and family.
One thing to add to that too, and both based on what Doug and Michelle were saying, you know, is one thing that I've done personally, and I encourage our team to do is kind of shift their mindset. So if they have someone that shows up late, or that has to leave early, or that maybe is going through a tough time, they're not as productive as they normally would be, to kind of take that perspective and say, hey, look, you know, instead of saying, oh yeah, so-and-so is not towing the line, let's, you know, see how this tracks, but to actually ask, see if anything's going on, see if there's anything in their personal life, if they need some time to spend with their family, or if there's a underlying reason why they're late consistently for 3 or 4 days, there might be something there personal to them that is affecting that outcome. It's not just a work performance thing. So and it's a difficult shift to try to use that lens as, hey, this person's been late a couple of days, instead of, you know, being disciplinary about it. Let's talk about it and see if there's an underlying cause, because sometimes there is. Most of the time it's not because they want to be late or they want to miss work. They have something going on and they're having trouble dealing with it, and they maybe need some resources, and we could be that group that helps them connect. You know, the more people we train to recognize the signs, and start the conversation and have that conversation, the better off we are. So if there are 300, 400 people on site and nobody's trained up to listen and to recognize, that's not going to be a lot of people that can catch suicide warnings. But if we do train half the job, then you have half the people out there that are trained to catch that. So if someone says in passing, hey, this place would be better off without me, someone's going to say, hey, stop. What did you just say? What did you mean by that? Let's have a conversation. Being able to catch that sign and be comfortable having that conversation is a cultural shift as well. And it takes time, and it has to be organic. It can't be anything that's forced. It can't be an initiative that's mandated. It just kind of happens on its own. That's where we need to be. I mean, can you imagine a construction culture where the foreman maybe pops off at the apprentice and just not normal conversation, just shows a lot of frustration. And the apprentice says, hey, normally you're not like this. Usually you're really good at communicating. Is there anything that's bothering you? Can we have that conversation? Can you imagine if that's where we are in construction? Because that's where we need to be. If someone is a supervisor to me, I should still feel just as comfortable as telling somebody else, if I catch a suicide warning sign or behavior or mood, that I can say, hey, let's have a conversation. Is everything okay? That's where we need to be as an industry.
It's the ask them to stand up for suicide prevention, creating safe culture where people feel safe asking for themselves or others. I mean, that's
exactly our goal.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Doug?
Sorry, Doug.
I was just going to say, and Steve, you talk about stressors in life, tack on a global pandemic. Okay.
Right.
I mean, thank goodness that maybe this conversation isn't where we all want it to be, but it's at least heads and shoulders of where it was 5 years ago. Thank goodness that it already had a bit of momentum before the pandemic hit, because it became that much more important to just be aware of what's going on in a person's life outside of work, because Lord knows that added to it outside and at work.
And I think it gave us the opportunity and some more openings that maybe we didn't have. So if you're looking for a silver lining, that's the one I'm counting. I always say I lost my son to suicide and he was in low voltage wiring. And I always say that if I knew then what I know now, just like we're talking about asking someone how they're feeling, or asking them why they'll be late, or maybe asking him why he wants to come home and why he's doing whatever he's doing, it would have made a difference. So I think one of the last things we wanted to cover is, how do we integrate this with the field? I think we've talked about like going out to job sites, or when people join our company. And unfortunately, when there's an incident, it is a huge opportunity to integrate with the field. I know Michelle and I both march out to our safety meetings, and like we say, this is a lady who talks about suicide and mental health all the time. She's not crazy. I'm pretty much the same person at my company, and we joke that I'm the mom of the company, and so that's why they listen to me. Talk to me about some of the bigger companies and how you integrate it, and how do you get from your senior VP who brought it home or brought it to the company to your laborers in the field. Doug or Steve, this is you. You choose.
I'm going to go back to Toolbox Talks and stand down, and making sure that we're providing the resources for the leaders of those discussions. I'm going to just say time will tell a little bit to make sure to see if we're making enough progress all the way down to the craft elements of our field. But we just got to keep making it top of the agenda at those appropriate levels of meetings. I think Michelle said it being on the task hazard analysis, and I can't say right now if it's on ours or not. I'm going to be surprised if it's not, and if it's not, it needs to be. So I think that's another good one, because it's just every day. It's part of the conversation at all times. So I think that's a great idea.
I think you're right, Doug. Absolutely. I think the key term I picked up on there too is being a resource. I think that's something I'm known for and that I'm very passionate about. If anyone needs anything, I'm giving freely of any resources I create or have, and just getting it out there to the field, making it a normalized conversation, but also making it a conversation where, when people see me coming, they understand they can have this conversation, but also having other trained people on our job sites, within our company that are the champions that can run with it, and identifying those people and helping them have the resources and help launch that culture where the the people in the field, they see you come in, they see a couple stickers on your hard hat that they know that you've been trained because they found out during orientation that this is our culture, this is where you can reach out to, and they're comfortable with having that, you know, saying, hey, I need some information. I'm a carpenter. Where can I get my EAP information? Or I'm a laborer. Where can I find this? I think being a resource and letting them know that you're there, and most of all, that you care about them. You know, care and concern is one of the biggest things. And maybe they don't want to hear that you care about them, but that's what they're going to hear when they come through the orientation. When they come through the door.
Make it personal.
That's right. Hey, look, I care about you. I care about that you get home to your family safely every day. If you need anything, let me know. Here are some resources that you can use. Even if you don't want to talk to me, there's a text line, there's a crisis line, and there's a lot of other stuff that and other conversations that we have. So maybe we don't have a suicide prevention conversation every time we have a Toolbox Talk, but we do have something that bolsters mental well-being, like hydration, proper sleep, proper nutrition, exercise, even the benefits of yoga and stuff like that, that people may be not considering as a Toolbox Talk, but we talk about it because all that stuff, dealing with depression and anxiety, addiction, things that help the risk factors, the things that weigh people down, discussing those, but also discussing the protective factors and saying, hey, this is what you can do. So if you start to feel depressed, you can re-energize your batteries. And there's a wide spectrum there, right? So if someone is feeling depressed for a couple of days and then shakes it, that's fine. If someone's feeling depressed for a couple of weeks and they can't snap out of it, knowing that, hey, I'm self-aware enough to say, it's been a couple of weeks, I still feel like this, I need to reach out for help. And then just being that resource. I keep learning, keep giving, keep being a resource, find those people within your company. And if you are that person, try to duplicate yourself as much as possible, because then you'll begin to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I think the most basic part of all of this, starting the culture, starting the conversation, normalizing it, is just take the first step or have the first conversation. Obviously, there's a lot of resources and there's a lot of levels to this, and there's challenges. We've all had challenges putting this in place, or and still have challenges in front of us. But starting the conversation, or borrowing a tool talk, or like Doug has a coin that I ordered mine after we got off the phone the other day, and you know, just little steps. And like Steve said, adding people to your army, and just starting, it can be that simple. Don't be overwhelmed. Michelle, more on that? How do you measure your success? How do you arm your people?
Yeah, well, arming the just in those daily interactions and the tools and the resources and the wallet cards and the key tags and the hard hats. I mean, all those little things that eventually add up, and you never know what it's going to be, the one thing that's going to connect with somebody. And so, and one step is more than nothing. You know, doing one thing is more than nothing, and that's where it starts. And so, yeah, not being overwhelmed and thinking that you have to have a complete, you know, hire a person to run this program and complete the program and do all these things. I mean, just taking that first step. And then as far as measurements of, I guess before I get to measurements of success, the other thing is, yeah,
sorry, two questions.
No, you're good. I'm organizing my head here. That getting comfortable that you might do the trainings and you might teach people the warning signs and you might teach people how to have the conversation, and they still might not feel 100% comfortable having it. But if you have that kind of referral process in place, where they feel comfortable coming and talking to you and saying, hey, I have concerns about this person, that's 100 times better than just not saying it at all. And so that's where I guess I would land on my kind of, how do I measure success? And because it's a hard thing, right? And we get asked that in companies, and as you know, with the CISP, we get that asked, you know, how many lives have you saved? Well, I don't know, you know, and we're never going to know. And you have to get comfortable knowing that you're probably never going to hear all the success, all the wins. You just hope you don't hear the, you know, the losses. And so, you know, one of the, is that referral process working? So talking about it enough, and people knowing, hey, being comfortable to speak up when something's wrong. So we had a couple years ago now, young man, good worker, always here, always good, shows up one day and is just visibly shaken and upset. And crew leader that he's working with said, like, are you okay? Are you okay to work today? And he said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm safe to work today. So that crew leader went into his manager, told him, hey, something's going on. I don't know what it is, but I don't feel good. Manager went out and talked to him. He came into his office, broke down crying, and manager was comfortable, called me. I came in early, met with him, and I said, are you thinking about suicide? And he said, I'm not right now, but I have been. And I said, okay, great. We're going to make a plan. Let's make a plan. And he lived alone, and I knew he had firearms. And I said, I don't think you can go home right now. And he said, no, I don't think I should go home right now. So he agreed to let me call his mom, get him connected with his mom. She took him to get resources. And he, and so it's those stories that you win, and it's worked. The plan has worked. And that's where you go, okay, for one of those, I know that there's lots of other little stories going on that I don't know about. And that, he worked for us for about he was gone for about 2 weeks, got help, came back successful, left after 6 months to go move on to kind of the next level of career that we knew he was planning to. And he still calls every few months and just says, thank you. And he says, I know that I was at SSC at that time for the reason because I could get the help that I needed. And I don't know what I would have done if I was somewhere else. And so that's the only way that we're going to be able to measure it is knowing that for every one great story that we hear, there's the little ones going on that we don't hear about, and that we really are making a difference. Because for that series of people to feel comfortable to speak up, connect with help, know kind of the right next step to do, that's a win in my books.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think if we aren't, you're lucky that in that case you had someone in the field, a field champion, to help you and to call that and head it up. So if you aren't in the field or you're not connecting, try to find a field champion also. And remember, none of us are mental health professionals. We know enough. We know enough to be dangerous. We know enough to go to get help or where to get help. So I think that's worth saying too.
Well, it's important to say that you don't have to be, this isn't you committing to being a mental health professional, and this isn't you signing up to be everybody's personal counselor or therapist. This is just knowing the steps to take to get them connected with the care, and knowing the resources and helping them get connected with the resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if that person needed stitches, okay, I'm not talking about a safety incident, okay? If it was a physical item, nobody would think twice, right? And so, Michelle, your point is, this is different, but you're not a medical doctor. You also don't have the other skill sets. You just need to know what to be able to do and have resources. So,
hey, Patsy.
Yes, go.
I think one of the things, and to touch upon what Michelle and Doug just mentioned about having resources, one thing that I want to give some advice to people is, if they are trying to launch a suicide prevention culture within their company, to reach out to the community as well, because there are a lot of other general contractors and other people, just like we did here in Portland with the partnership. There are a lot of people that can help share resources and really create a really diverse team to make sure that you're successful. We wouldn't be successful if we didn't have a lot of diversity and included a lot more people in our team, because it's not just a one-person show. It can't be one person's perspective. There's no way that I can speak for everybody that's representative in construction. So we have to make sure that we're reaching out to people and getting their feedback and their input as well. To be successful, to be truly successful, the resources the support that I've gotten from the partnership in our local community outside of my employer, and then the resources and support that I've gotten within my company and employer have been phenomenal. I wouldn't have been able to do anything, not one article, not one video, nothing, not one Toolbox Talk without their support. The more support they gave me, the more empowerment they gave me, the more I ran with what I could do. And so it's really not just my success, it's all of our success.
how do you measure success in your big companies across the field? Like Michelle and I can walk out to all the job sites, and I meet with all my guys once a week. Doug, how do you do that when you're spread across the country, the world, right?
It's about seeing wins. Okay. I mean, we're not tracking it like other metrics, but it's about seeing wins and stories about, hey, we were able to intervene here, we were able to offer help there. We're especially proud when we see those wins at the craft level, because it's a little tougher nut to crack. So that's probably the best answer I have for it. Is we have instances of different wins where we were able to intervene and treat each other with a little bit more compassion and empathy. So, and it's, part of normalizing again.
I have a example, if I could. I was at my son's baseball practice, and I was reading my QPR, the question, persuade, refer, for those that don't know what QPR is. Mm-hmm. The instructor manual, because I wanted to become a master trainer so I could train other trainers. So I'm sitting there reading this in the cab of my truck, and I hear someone who's attending the practice, another parent, talking to a friend, and the person says, "Oh, I just went through the QPR suicide prevention training at the training center yesterday." And I was just like, "You got to be kidding me." I was like, "Excuse me, are you in the trade?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're carpenters." And I was like, "Did you go through a QPR training?" "Yeah, we just had the QPR training last night." So to me, that, the partnership and the people that we're reaching out to and what they're doing on their own, hearing those conversations, and this was random at my son's baseball practice, that hearing that conversation passing by somebody is phenomenal. And to me, and to get the emails and to get the people that reach out for resources, that's the success, is that people are asking for resources, that they're having these conversations, that they're doing the training, and that the culture is spreading. So when a person comes to my site and they go to 3 different general contractor sites and they come back to my site, we hear that the message is consistent. They all have the support of everybody in the community. I think that's where we need to measure success, is how often this is being talked about in our larger community, not just on our job site.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, we have come to the end of our scheduled presentation, but we would be willing to answer any questions that anyone has.
Patsy, can I talk for just a minute about the resources that are available and how people can access them?
Absolutely.
So those who aren't familiar or who haven't been to the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention's website, the website is preventconstructionsuicide.com. I'm sure it's been a lot of stuff, and you can link to it directly from the CFMA site as well. The CFMA Suicide Prevention page has links directly to it. And on there, so, Steve has talked about QPR training. We have Living Work Start training available on that site. So again, there's a lot of different training options out there. The START training, it's a 60 to 90 minute online training, kind of walks you through some different scenarios and things. And that is available. If you take the pledge and become a stakeholder in the Alliance, which there's no cost, there's no commitment other than to say, I want to be part of, transforming this industry, that you can get some licenses for yourself and some of your team at no cost, underwritten through the Alliance. So that's available. There's a behavioral health screening tool, and I think we talked about that on our prep call, and I didn't talk about that, but yeah, there's tools on there to it's called MindWise, and there's different screening tools on there so people can use them to, kind of self-assess. And it's a great way to kind of build that mental health literacy as well. So that's one of the tools that we go through as a group during meetings, so that people can see it live, kind of how it works, and then feel more comfortable going out and accessing it. So again, that's a thing that we pay the subscription for through the Alliance, and then it's available, you can send that link out to your, everybody in your company, and they can use it. And then on there's downloads for the wallet cards that, cards that have the warning signs on them, and then the lifeline and crisis text line on the back. You can get key tags so that you have kind of that info always available with you. The Toolbox Talks are all on there to download. There's posters on there that you can order or download. All the resources are there. So again, like everybody has said, a lot of people have put a lot of time and effort into creating things. And this whole initiative, everybody's, attitude is very cooperative and collaborative behind it. So everybody wants, the goal is, improve the whole industry, not just improve one company or one, project site. And so all of these things are there. So use them, use the resources that are out there. Don't feel like you have to recreate the wheel. The place to start, there's a needs analysis that kind of can walk you through some things that you can do. And again, don't feel like you have to do every single thing on there. Doing 1 or 2 or 3 things is where really the right place to start. Otherwise you're going to burn out and not, you're not going to see the instant successes and you're going to say, this is a waste of time. So pick a few things that fit your organization and do those, but use the resources that are out there. They're fully available, fully free for everybody. So please do that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michelle. The other thing that we kind of hit on early is get comfortable with talking about this yourself. And it makes it comfortable for those around you to hear it and to start to talk about it. Michelle had talked about at her safety meeting, she had gone on and done one of those questionnaires or needs analysis or mental health checks with the group she was training, which is a great way to expose people if you're not quite comfortable getting on a national webinar and talking about suicide prevention. It's a good start. And like Michelle said, there's a lots of resources. I know Chrissy's putting them in the chat for people to have, and perhaps we can send them out with a follow-up email to everyone that's attended. Any questions?
I could,
Stuart.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Stuart just said, can I say just one thing? Yes.
When have I said that I could only say just one thing, Patsy?
I know. I was going to tease you, but I held back.
Thank you. Thank you, Patsy. Great presentation. I just had a couple of comments about CIASP that I wanted to make. So the link between CIASP and CFMA is they're really, well, they at one point in time were one and the same thing. And then we expanded and created this organization so that everyone in the industry could be involved. So CFMA is very invested in CIASP and very proud of the work that's been done there. I just wanted to mention 2 things. We're having a strategic planning meeting in a week or so, and we are always looking for people who want to volunteer and help. The CIASP has really a very thin bench of about 7 to 10 people who are on the board of trustees who basically do everything. And so if anyone on this call is interested in helping out, and I'll know more about what that means after the strategic planning meeting, we would love to hear from you. And the second thing I'd like to just say is CIASP is run on a shoestring. It's totally voluntary, and we do not have a budget. CFMA contributes to it, as do some other organizations. But any donations that people want to make would be greatly appreciated. It's, we really don't charge anything for anything, but we have a company that we use that's our association management company. So obviously, like any organization, we have expenses, but love to get any support that we can from anyone on here, and appreciate Patsy, what you and your panel have done. Great job.
Thanks, Stuart. Steve, did you have one more thing to add?
Just a bit of advice too, that sometimes when I point people, and from my past experience, when you're trying to find a resource, one of them, don't just think it's one and done or an end all be all. You have to find the one that fits. You have to find the resource that you're comfortable with. So with me, finding someone I could talk to, it wasn't the first person. It wasn't the third person either. So it took me a while to find out which fit for me. So I would just, when you're going through this, when you're getting people the resources, And when you're looking for Toolbox Talks, and we're looking for all that stuff, and just make sure that you understand that, hey, if it doesn't work the first time, there is a lot of stuff out there to be flexible and to have patience and to find what really works well.
Yeah, I love that. One of the questions that's come up is, what if someone has trouble getting the message to the field? The workers want someone who can connect and understand their challenge. How have you overcome this, especially for small companies? Michelle, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I think, again, just kind of going back to what I said, don't expect maybe that, especially the field crews are going to jump up and kind of fully buy in and say, put their hands up and say, I'm a champion, but be consistent in the messaging, continue to provide the information. And that, again, the path might just look a little different. Like you referred to the guy who came in and told the manager about the employee as a champion. He would never identify himself as that, but clearly he had heard the message and he knew what to do. And so, yeah, don't feel the pressure to think, okay, it's all working when on every crew, there's somebody who's, trained and is identifying as the champion and who's going to be willing to do this. Just trust that the information is getting out there, and that when the moment comes, you've built the culture. And I think this is where it gets to that cultural element of, that's a priority, is that people care about one another enough to offer help or to seek out help for somebody else if they need it. And so I don't think there's any kind of one size fits all approach or solution to that. But again, it's just being consistent and not giving up and not worrying. Like I never hear anybody talking about it, so it might not be working. You might not, like I said, that's the first time that I've been identified as the lady who talks about suicide all the time, but she's not crazy. That was, but it's clearly been there. And so again, that's not somebody who I would have identified as a champion, but clearly he's hearing the message and cares about it enough to introduce the new person to the person that could help if they need it, kind of thing. So I think it's just that ongoing, repetitive providing of information and creating that culture where it's really fostered and modeled and exampled.
Excellent. And I think we heard Steve say earlier that you can be the champion, or you may have someone out there that's being the champion. He incorporates it in all the safety talks, and his people share with others. So what would be your best piece of advice for someone who just listened to this and wants to start doing something? Steve, call Steve. No.
I would say, honestly, what worked for me is that, like I said before, it can't be a mandate. It can't be something that's a fad or a new thing that we're doing. It's got to grow organically. And I would just say, take it slow and have a good plan. If you're going to roll something out, have a good rollout plan, and just start the conversation. Start it slowly. Have the first Toolbox Talk. Throw a couple stickers on the first aid kits, or have a roll of stickers and stickers are cheap. Have a roll of stickers with the crisis line number and start talking about it. Just kind of edge its way in there and grow it into something that is part of the culture. If anything is successful, it usually gets grown organically, slowly, and embedded, like Michelle said, and baked into the culture. And that might take time. It might not be a month. It might not be a week. It might not be a year. But over time, you'll see it pick up, because we're all human and we all feel stress and we all need a resource once in a while. And if we're talking about that, and if we're comfortable talking about that, people are going to be motivated to reach out for help and to help other people help people. So just take it slow, and then make sure that you have patience and that you're flexible. And if you need anything, like I said before, find that community that's going to help support you. Don't do it yourself.
I think getting, hey, Patsy, I also think getting as much leadership talking consistently about it is better, okay? Because that helps again, back to how many times we use the word normalization. It helps normalize it a little bit. It helps make it okay. And I would also say what resonates with your folks. If tying it to safety you think is a better message, go for it. If tying it to group insurance, I see Kevin O'Shea just posted, you know,
I love that.
Mental health is as important as physical health. And he's got health and safety here, which I think is dead on. But what's going to resonate more, and that could be different. Craft might resonate more with safety, and office might resonate more with, you know, group insurance communications. Hit it both ways. Like I said, it's part of our wellness program, which is really more tied to our group insurance program. But hit it in both spots, and I think then that at least starts making it repetitive conversation versus oh yeah, that was an email that I saw one time, you know.
I agree. And I think for me, it would be make it personal. Find a story, find that connection. Like you said, if you're connecting it to their family at home, because that's easier for them to relate to, or maybe it's something that's happened in the company, or I think normalizing the conversation and talking about it, it starts to become personal. I know we talked about this when we kind of did our first once over, that you're at a presentation and you're starting to talk about it, and you say, who's been touched by suicide or a mental health thing, and they are thinking, oh me, because Bo invited them, they're there, right? Or then you start talking about, have you had a coworker, have you had a cousin, do you know someone, and you watch their faces turn white because suddenly they remember, or they're connected, and you get buy-in from that. I'm out of questions, guys. Woo. All right. Christy put up our names and our emails. Feel free to reach out and contact any of us. We are all very passionate about this, and like Steve says, don't go at this alone. You have a whole community, and Michelle and I would attest to, we have lots of resources and lots of places that we go to as a small company, because we don't necessarily have a whole safety team like Doug does, but any one person can
Have you
start.
been to Maryland back today, or what? Working there.
Uh-oh, someone else is in there. Got it? Chrissy, anything to add?
Just thank you. This has been extremely informative. You all have provided a wealth of information for people who are just getting started, for people who are along the path and want to know where to go next. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the attendees, or the panelists rather. Everyone is willing to share and help. They mean every word of it. So don't be shy.
And Brad Anderson added, he has experience working with folks suffering from substance abuse, and he's always willing to help if asked to, and put his phone number in the chat. And I think we may not all know, but unfortunately, substance abuse and mental health and suicide tend to go hand in hand, as not fun as that is.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Right.
Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you.